Hi guys, I hope you had a good break. We're going to pick up going into this term here with Learning Unit 9, which is about while loops and do loops. This is on page 171 in the Prac book. So we've done some loops already. We did the for loops. Okay, you'll remember we did that. And a for loop really comes into its own when you know exactly how many times you want to loop. Okay, obviously then you're going to use a for loop if you know exactly how many times you want to loop. But often the case is you don't. You're just going to loop until a certain condition is true, or you're going to keep looping while a certain condition is true. And for that, you often don't know how many times you're going to loop. And for that case, we are going to end up using while loops and do loops. This is sort of one of the last pieces of the puzzle with regards to basic programming. Okay, so that sort of covers why we need a while loop. If we go on to page 172, you will see there's the actual flow chart for a while loop there. And you can actually see where the loop is. So that's sort of the general structure. You can go through that. And you can see they've got the SITC there, S obviously being a selector variable to use, I being to initialize the variable that you're going to be using, T means to test it, is the condition true or false, and C being to change the variable. This is super important, this concept of changing the variable inside the while loop. Inside of the for loop, the loop counter itself in the for loop statement, that would make sure that the loop ended. Okay, remember we had to change the loop counter. If you didn't change the loop counter in a for loop, then you would be stuck in an infinite loop. And we've got the same issue here on the while loop. Okay, we're going to get stuck in an infinite loop if you do not change the test. So that's just one thing you've got to be careful of inside of a while loop, or in fact any loop, not just a while loop. Okay, they go through an example there of using one and breaking the problem down. You can read through that, see how they do it. They show you the pseudocode there. This is on page 173 in the middle in section 933 on algorithm. Okay, they've got the pseudocode there for a while loop. And make sure you know how that works. At the bottom of the page there, algorithm 1 and algorithm 2. The correct one obviously is algorithm 1 for what the problem that they are stating. Make sure you understand why. Okay, coding the algorithm, activity 3, testing the code, evaluating the solution. You can go through the exercise there. Okay, there's nothing strange here. In the book, it's pretty much explaining everything. You can go through checkpoint 1. I'm now on page 177. Okay, section 9.4, SITC for the while loop. We explained what SITC is, and they go into it in a bit more detail here to just make sure you understand what is what there. Okay, investigating SITC, I'm now on page 178, and it goes through there, through activity 4, tells you why S is important, why I is important, and why T is important, and why C is important. Okay, if you look here on the screen in front of you here, I've written a small program. Okay, what this thing's going to do, it's going to throw random numbers. I'll just go underneath here, and you'll see I've written over here, I've written a little custom method. Okay, we haven't really covered this in much detail yet, and we will do when we get to Learning Unit 11. But this little piece of code here is just a custom method that we can call, and it's going to just throw a random number. Okay, we did this in the last section on throwing random numbers. And what this thing's going to do is when I call this my custom throw random function, or my throw random method here, and I pass 2 integers into it, it's going to throw me I can see here that it's going to return a double. Okay, so it's going to send me back a double value, a random value that's between between A and B. Okay, and you can see here I'm now calling it. So here's my loop. Okay, so I'm just sending out a string here, just says while loop. Here's my S. Okay, I declare a variable called num. Okay, so that's the S. Okay, that I'm setting up a variable to use. Here's my I initialize it to a value, so I'm setting num equal to 8.0. Okay, it's a double, that's why I've got 8.0 and not just 8. And here's the start of my while loop. I say while num is greater than 7. Okay, there's the T, the test. Okay, so this loop here will keep looping as long as num is greater than 7. As soon as num is less than 7, this loop will end. So what I do is I then call my function. Okay, there's my throw random, and I'm going to get it to throw me a random number between 5 and 20. Okay, as long as it's greater than 7, okay, it's going to print the number out and it's going to loop back again. So as long as the random number is greater than 7, it will keep going. So it'll keep throwing random numbers and printing them. As soon as it prints a random number that's less than 7, as soon as it throws one that's less than 7, the loop will end. Okay, and we can see, I'll run it and you'll see it run. Here it goes there, the while loop, the very first number it threw was 5.32. You can see it there, and it exited immediately because the very first one was less than 7. Let's run it again. Okay, this time we got a couple. It threw 19, 14, 12, 16, 7.7 is still more than 7. And there, 5.28, that was the first time we had a number less than 7, and the loop exited. So it'll just keep running until the number is less than 7. So while it is greater than 7, it will keep running. Okay, so that was a while loop. Okay, you can read through section 9.5, while loops produce a given terminating value. This is very handy when you want to you want the loop to keep running until you put a value in. For example, here they're going to be adding up integers, and you're going to keep putting integers in there, and there must be positive integers from 0 upwards. As soon as you enter -1, then that is the key value. That is the value that you're using to finish your program. And this is very handy in things like menus, when you might push, say, the Q key to make it quit, or E for exit, something like that. Okay, so that's using while loops where you've got an exact value that you want to terminate your loop with. Okay, so make sure you read through that section there, 9.5 on page 181. Go through activity 5, make sure you know how that pseudocode works, and make sure you understand that flow diagram as well. Okay, you've got enough ammo in your ammo box now to do exercise 3 and checkpoint 2. You won't have any problems with those. 9.6, okay, this is to do with errors in while loops. This is on page 184. The obvious things you need to watch out for is make sure that your loop will terminate at some stage. Okay, don't leave it as an infinite loop. Okay, you can go through exercise 4 and exercise 5. Okay, nothing unusual in there, just quite a bit of coding to do. Okay, I'm now on page 188. And I'm now going to show you a do loop. Now, a do loop and a while loop are very, very similar. Okay, in fact, I'll put them both up on the screen here. You see I've got a while loop over here, and then I've got a do loop over here. Now, you'll note that the glaring difference between this is here in the while loop, we do the evaluation. Okay, we check to see the condition before we enter the loop. Okay, this is called pre-evaluation. Before. Okay, so this loop here, it's possible that it may never run. Okay, if I made that value of 8, if I made it a 3, then this loop would never run because num would start off less than 7, and the contents of this loop would never ever run. Okay, important to understand that. Okay, the evaluation for the loop is done right at the beginning. It's called pre-evaluation. Here for the do loop, you can see we just write do, and then we've got squiggly brackets, and then the while, the evaluation takes place at the end. Okay, they call this post-evaluation, at the end. Okay, the evaluation takes place at the end. The big difference is you are guaranteed that this part of your loop will run at least once. Okay, you are guaranteed that this will run at least once because it only checks at the end to see whether it must loop back. And this type of loop is quite handy in, say, a menu system where you definitely want it to run at least once. Okay, and then after that, you're going to check and see what key the person pressed, and then take that menu option. But here in this do loop, post-evaluation, you are guaranteed at least one run through your loop. That's the difference between a while loop and a do loop. And you can see that this program here does exactly the same, okay, as the one above it. And if I run the program, you'll see there it is. I don't know why we got so many values like that. That's a bit weird. Let's run it again. Okay, there we go. Obviously something weird is wrong here. Okay, but that is a do loop. Okay, I'll have a check and see why mine doesn't work. Should do. Make sure that you understand how the while loop and the do loop run. They're exactly the same. Just understand the difference between them. Okay, you can see they show you the flow diagram there for a do loop. Okay, it's not too much different to the while loop. Okay, you can see they show you then how, and you can see the difference here as well, is that one there goes SRTC, this one goes SRCT. Okay, the test happens at the end. You still have to do a change. You must make sure you change whatever it is that you are evaluating here. Okay. Okay, so you should be able to work through activity 8 and exercise 6. Okay, and 9.8, we're on the last page now. This is page 192. Choosing the appropriate looping structure. It's quite easy to choose which one of these 3 loops you want. As I said right at the beginning, okay, if you know exactly how many loops you want, then the for loop is your boy. Okay, that's the one you're going to pick because you know exactly how many you want to loop. Okay, if you don't know how many times you want to loop, but you want the loop to run at least one time, then the do loop is your boy to pick. Okay, if it's neither of those, then the while loop is where you go. Okay, more often than not, you end up doing way more while loops than you do loops. Okay, so that's the end of looping. That's the while loop and the do loop. Just work your way through this section of the book, read through it again. It's not too difficult to understand.